Hey guys, it's Roderick. I'm here with a review of Netflix, The Invitation. Okay, first of all, I hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy Hanukkah, and you all are having a very wonderful Kwanzaa. Okay, so I was here trying to get my money's worth out of Netflix, so I decided to watch The Invitation. So I watched it last night, and I was like kind of excited because you see the promo, and you're like, okay, this could be interesting. So, I watched it last night and then I started thinking about it and thinking about it. I was like, we're going to make a video because we got to go in and have a really good discussion about this because The Invitation kind of exemplifies a lot of issues that I'm kind of seeing in a lot of these streaming services and a lot of these streaming films. So I think it's good to have a nice conversation. So if you're new to this channel, this is where we review television shows, movies, some reality television shows, but with an eye towards screenwriting and filmmaking and acting, since I'm a screenwriter, director, and actor. So sit back, get your drink, because we're about to have a good old Mary Kiki about The Invitation. Okay, so I'm going to make 6 points, okay? Really 5 about The Invitation and kind of like where it went well, where we're right, and kind of like wrap this up in a bow, right? So let me start with the frame, okay? Well, here's how I'm going to frame this discussion. So, as many of you kind of remember, there once was a movie done by M. Night Shyamalan called Unbreakable. Fantastic movie starring Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, okay? Bruce Willis is this man who is seemingly unbreakable, except for he has this weakness towards water. He meets Samuel L. Jackson character, Mr. Glass, and they kind of go through this kind of tete-a-tete and realizing that Samuel L. Jackson's character is the villain. Sorry if I ruined it for you. It's not really that much of a spoiler, but it's important to realize, okay? So we have Unbreakable, right? Fantastic movie. Then M. Night Shyamalan does this film called Split, okay, with James McAvoy, okay, about this guy with multiple personalities, terrorizing people. You watch this movie, and then you're like, okay, it's pretty good. Like, I kind of waited because the hype was really like, really up there. So I watched the movie, and the movie in and of itself, I thought was very, very good, okay? Then we get to the end credit scene and we find out that Split is occurring in the same universe as Unbreakable. And I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be awesome, okay? You got Bruce Willis's character who's Unbreakable. Then you got James McAvoy character has these multiple personalities and they have like these kind of like grounded superpowers or whatever like that. Holy fuck, okay? Then Universal decides to come out with Mr. Glass, which is now the intersection between Unbreakable and Split. And Mr. Glass, as we know, is this villain, and I am so hyped. I'm like, oh my God, good on you, Universal, trying to get your Harry Potter money, blah, 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 okay? The movie comes out, and I am substantially disappointed. I'm disappointed because the script was bad. And I'm also was disappointed from a business perspective is that Universal decided to make a film with with an eye not towards making more money. Because let's be clear, every major studio, Warner Brothers, Universal, Sony, Marvel, they're all chasing that Harry Potter money. Harry Potter was such an anomaly because it was a guaranteed $1 billion every time it came out, okay? Every time it came out, you were gonna cha-ching $1 billion. And then some studio executive, 5 movies in, was like, damn, we only got like one more Harry Potter book left. What are we gonna do? Somebody raised their hand in the Harry Potter meeting and said, why don't we make it 2 movies? And split the last book into 2 movies, and they got $2 billion. So every studio has been chasing that $1 billion cachet of a franchise of something that they can know that's going to be guaranteed, established IP, butts in the seat, everyone's going to see it, everyone's going to be talking about. The fact that Universal fumbled the bag with Mr. Glass such that they could have created a universe that still could have been going on today. Even though Bruce Willis has retired from acting at this point, they could have had characters and storylines and plots that could have been spin off into television shows, into more films, and they totally fumbled it by putting forth a subpar movie that they really shouldn't have put out, that was flawed from the concept into the script, into the deciding edition. That being said, watch Unbreakable, watch Split, and then watch Mr. Glass, and let's have discussions in the comments. But that's my frame. That's how I'm going to frame this discussion with The Invitation. So, that being said, Alfred Hitchcock once says, that he was asked, what's the key to a good movie? And his response is, the script. The script, the script, the script. The script must always be good to have a good movie. Show me a bad movie and I will show you a bad script. That does not always say that good scripts don't always translate to bad films. But 9 times out of 10, if you have a bad film, you will have a bad script, okay? Now, the script for The Invitation, I'm not saying is bad, okay? I'm not even saying that the film show in itself is bad, but there are some major flaws. So let's go to some of the things that kind of stuck out to me when I first started watching this. Now, if you watched the show before, I'll always give you tips. So, first tip is when you're watching a television show, especially on Hulu, always watch it with the closed captions and also pause so you'll see where the act breaks are. In television shows, there are 5 act breaks. Most major films have 3 act breaks, okay? And the first act break of the first act usually stops around 8 to 10 minutes, right? So about 8 to 10 minutes, we have what's called our inciting incident, or some people call it our call to action. This is where our protagonist is now given a challenge, a quest, a journey for them to go on, something that's what's going to propel them in the middle of the movie, okay? So The Invitation starts off with Evie Jackson Alexander, who is a waitress, blackish waitress, working in New York City, and her mother's just recently died of cancer, and her father's died when she was 14. She's an artist. She's trying to get her MFA. She's doing ceramics. Don't call it pottery, because she got in her feelings. Don't call it pottery. Call it ceramics. She's doing ceramics, okay? So as we start the film off, we get a flashback to a few months ago before this, and a woman commits suicide in the film, okay? We don't know we don't know where this house is. We see a woman committing suicide in the film, and we get a hint that she's not exactly human, okay? Now we meet Evie. She's worked her 9 to 5, singing her Dolly Parton 9 to 5 job as a cater waiter, catering for this event, which is a knockoff 23andMe something, right? Anywho, she's working this cater waiter job, and then her friend, I forget the name of the friend, but her friend, at the end of the day, they count tips like, oh, I got us a swag bag. I'll take the booze. You could take the 23andMe, okay? So Evie goes home, and we see bills past due. She's lived in New York City. Just that very typical hard New York City grind in your 20s, and when you haven't really arrived yet exactly what you're doing, okay? So, of course, Evie does the 23andMe test. I'm like, okay, where's this going? Bop, bop, boop. So Evie takes the 23andMe test, and then they have this notification, which I've never done this because, quite frankly, I don't really trust those things. But I guess they could notify your living relatives if you're related after you do it. I don't know if that's true or not, or whether that's a feature they added for fiction. Y'all let me know. So anyway, she hits the button. Come to find out, her friend Ola, she has a relative, a second cousin named Oliver, who lives in England, who's going to be in New York on business. So she decides to have, lunch with Oliver. Mind you, her black friend's like, I don't know, girl, you need to be careful, whatever, which I appreciate. As we'll get to the friend towards the end. So I was like, okay, so she meets them. He's like saying what you do. She's like, oh, my mother died of cancer, or my dad died when I was 14. Oliver's like, well, we have a pretty big family here. You're part of it. And we have a wedding coming up because my cousin is getting married. So why don't you come to England, come to the wedding. You get to meet your family. This is this. And he's like, no. She's like, I don't know. He's like, really, all on me. I'll take care of it, whatever. Now, call to action sounds great. Like this makes sense, right? You broke, you ain't got nothing. You get a free trip to London. Why not? Okay. No problems on our call to action. No problems and whatever. But I'm not really kind of like caring about Evie's plight, right? Because being broke in a big city ain't a motherfucking novel thing, right? So what do we got here? Okay. But I'm like, well, we'll go with this. Okay. So Evie arrives in London. her black friend's like, girl, make sure you take license plates, text me when you go to bed, all the things that natural black people in America know about going to random places or random white people, okay? So the friend is like getting MVP 5-star points because these are all the things I would tell my friend who was traveling with some random white person with a British accent to some house, wedding or whatever, and you staying up at their house, right? Like, for real. Like, if she could bring, obviously you can't bring a guest. Guests don't have guests, so you don't bring random people to places that you've only been invited to. But I would have made sure pictures of me going to bed, pictures for me to like do whatever, just to make sure we're okay and we're not, that this shit doesn't turn into some like Liam Neeson taken situation, okay? So anyway, so Evie shows up and they're unloading the maids, and the maids all have like numbers on their aprons. And, you know, she bumps into one of the waitresses and they drop the whole bottle of glasses, okay? So Evie, because she's used to kind of like this, you know, the servitude life, the service industry, excuse me, being in the service industry, she's like very sympathetic to them, you know, and she's asking their names. And then here comes this snooty butler, who is the actor who played Alfred from Gotham. I forgot his name, I didn't write his name down, but he plays the butler, okay? So she decides to get us the whole thing, and they do this thing where you can't tell whether the butler is being nasty to Evie because Evie's standing with the maids, or whether he's speaking directly to her, or whether he's speaking directly to the maids. But the objective of what the actors, or I guess directors, trying to show is that there is some kind of colorism / racism going into this whole discussion, right? Which I was like, if you're going to do it, do it. Like, if you're going to make him be a racist or be having racist tendencies, make him like be 10 toes down about it, okay? So that was kind of unclear. Anyway, Evie goes in, and so now she's like living in the house, and she has a lady servant, and she's like, ooh, lady servant. And you can tell she ain't been nowhere in her life. She's just like oohing and awing and very giving like Beverly's Hillbilly tease, like she's been in the house before or whatever, which I was like, okay, whatever, maybe she hasn't. So she gets in the room, her lady servant is like, oh, there are bars on the windows, there's these shrikes that come by, whatever. And then while Evie was outside, she meets Walt DeVille, who is the owner of the house, which is called the New Carfax Abbey. Walt's played by Thomas Doherty, okay? Now, when he says, welcome to the New Carfax Abbey, I was like, huh, I've heard that name before. Why does that name sound familiar? But I was like, is that? Okay, we'll see, okay? So I was like, I know that name. Anyway, so I'm watching it, and so then, you know, Walt's nice, very attractive actor, very attractive man, chemistry with Evie. I'm like, okay, boop, boop, boop. We have the invitation, we have the setup. What's Evie's journey is gonna be? So as I'm watching this, right, then I go, New Carfax Abbey, because I own Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that's the name of the abbey that they use the dirt in, that Dracula moves into when he moves to the new world. So I was like, okay, we got a vampire-ish going on. Okay, whatever, okay? So now I'm thinking vampire, I'm gonna start holding this film up to Interview with a Vampire, right? Because if you watch my video about Interview with a Vampire, you heard about what the things I really liked, the things they did really well, and how this is how you do a vampire show for 2020, okay? So I'm thinking, I'm watching it, and as we're getting into the film and Evie's discovering the mysteries and the things that are going on about this spooky house, whatever, and we're seeing some of the kind of like mysterious things of like the vampires being in the house and disappearances happening, I'm like, why am I caring about Evie, right? They have given me nothing to really care about Evie, which gets me to our next point, is that the characters must be worth investing in, right? And this is where the film fails, right? I did not care about Evie's plight. In fact, I thought Evie was a fucking fool, okay? Because as we navigate through the story, right, we come to find out that there really is not a wedding, that the wedding is really going to be Evie's wedding, and that the Dracula has put the human people who deal with his real estate, his law, his legal practices, and his real estate and his banking, they have to have a female heir, okay? So the woman we saw in the flashback was really Evie's great-grandmother, okay, who had an affair with a footman and then had a black child, and the black child went with the footman into London and eventually made his way to America, and ergo became Evie's father, okay? So we're like, no, it would be, no, Evie's mother, okay? So, because Evie's kind of like very light-skinned, black-ish, okay? So if Alexander's a name, we'll say, so it must have been Evie's so it must have been from Evie's mother's side, or whatever like that. No, it had to have been from, because they don't, so the problem that they put up in the film is, they thought there are no female Alexanders. So Evie is a long-lost female Alexander. So it couldn't have been her mother, because they would have snatched her mother, right? So it had to have been from her father. So, her father is black, and Evie's mother is white-ish. We see a picture, but we don't know. She could have been light-skinned-ish or whatever, biracial, whatever. We'll get to that towards the end. So Evie and her blackish self is now, the de facto guest of honor, and she's developing this relationship with Walter Will. We're like, okay, we got vampires in the house. Okay, they're being snatching. How is this gonna really play out, right? But because they don't really fill Evie with any type of corporeal, like desires, emotions, plans, she's just a broke ass artist in New York City. That is not novel. I don't care about this. So because, excuse me, when you get to the climax or you get to the resolution, Evie's a fucking fool, okay? So I was like, okay, fine. So the point is, Evie, none of the characters are really worth investing in, right? Once you kind of figured out what was going on, you're like, well, give me something interesting. Give me something new. What are we going to do with this, right? Like, are you going to be like Louis? Are you like a whore, like a brothel? But she's just a bitch who ain't ever been nowhere and who's broke, but then decides she's going to stay broke because she gets a kicking in the morals because she don't want to be a vampire. Fuck me off, like, get the fuck up out of here with this, okay? But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, the next point is that the story must be worth traveling. I have no problem with predictable plot points, okay? It is the space between the plot points that makes the film, that makes the series. The fact that it was like, okay, this is vampires, fine. Give me an interesting vampire story. And the problem with The Invitation, and my biggest problem with The Invitation is that they told the wrong story, okay? The better story to be told was, instead of Evie having some kind of ridiculous, moralistic plan at the end saying that she doesn't want to be a vampire, she'd rather be broke in New York City and want to go and start killing her off her relatives, let her decide to be a vampire and see the complications in that. Because the fact is, you had 3 families, 2 other brides, bitch, that's a third of the working. That's a third of the fucking. That's a third of whatever. It's not like Louis and Lestat in Interview with the Vampire where you gotta do all the motherfucking work. Bitch, you got a crew. You gotta see him what? 2 days a week? He don't even have to suck your blood. Whatever. You could be on some rat, chicken, whatever blood diet or whatever. Excuse me. So I was just like, and so you're broke. He done had you a whole pottery art studio up in your house, but you gonna choose to have a kick in the morals. Once again, I'm not trying to say that I would have been some white vampire's bed wench, but it would have had me thinking up and late at night a lot longer than fucking Evie would. Because I was like, you fucking ridiculous with this. So the better story would be for Evie to say yes, and then the complications of being a vampire and being black-ish with these old money people in London or whatever. And you could have had a series and you could have had a show that was literally as on par or as great as Interview with the Vampire was. And that was a huge fumble because now you have nowhere for this story to go. You could have done at least another movie, another film, another spinoff, and it was a great fucking concept. But the pitch was, let's do this blackish kind of vampire movie. But the fumble was, everyone knows this. Okay, fine. She burns down Carfax Abbey. Carfax Abbey has burned down in every vampire movie. Why did she not stay? Okay, that did not make sense. I was reading this quote by Aaron Sorkin, and he says, it was a screenwriter quote that says, "What your characters do tells the audience about who they are. what your character says reveals what your characters think of who they are. And the problem is, if Edie's talking about she's being broke, if Edie ain't had no sex, if Edie ain't happy with her life, if Edie ain't had no family, here we go with somebody who provides you with a family, with money, with means and connections, and you're gonna turn all that away because somehow sucking on servants or whatever you gotta make your blood compromise to be was bad. That made no sense. Why? Because we never met Evie to be a high moral person, right? Evie's character was never the badge of which we met her with. She was a broke cater waiter who had no family. So a broke cater waiter with no family would take this proposition up. So that was like that was really the faulty of the really major kind of Achilles heel of this entire movie is that the characterization made no sense and no one really cared about Evie's journey because they're vampires, whatever, girl, like, you know, again, eggs and omelets here. So I was just like, okay. So, which leads me to this whole concept of, my next point is who's throwing away money here, right? Like I'm paying $26 a month for Netflix. They're increasing my, you know, monthly dues like every other year. And I was just like, or every other month really. And I was like, why could Netflix not see the fact that if they had done a different type of film, they could have had a blockbuster on their hands. The Witcher, I don't know what that's going to be like now, okay? Now that we done got the whole Cavill and like Cavill, you know, Hemsworth situation, like no studio does not want a knockout blockbuster film. No studio does not want something that's going to have millions and millions and millions of eyes. Everybody wants the Game of Thrones. Everybody's watching. Everybody's talking about. Everybody's seeing. And the Invitation had that potential if they now had fumbled it and not decided to tell the regular story, but a better story. They had all the characters from the original Bram Stoker Dracula. They had Nina Harker. They had Jonathan Harker. They had Lucy. And they had Carfax Abbey. It was all the makings to tell a really revamped, up-to-date, better story about a vampire that she could have killed him a couple of like another issue in, and she turned into like a black blade that's going around killing other vampires. The options were endless with this, and they totally funneled the bag. And my question is, who does not want more money? Netflix could have had a hit in their hands if they had not been so short-sighted and decided to kind of box in and tell this kind of very watered-down story. Netflix is the new HBO. If you remember and think about early on in the years of the early 2000s, and you think about all the great cutting-edge shows that are coming out of HBO, Netflix is that now, right? Because HBO's been bought by Discovery. Discovery wants to be, wants to have their cake and eat it too, be edgy, but be family friendly and have it merged into their kind of like thing. And I don't believe that that's actually going to work, right? So here's an opportunity for Netflix to step into that gap and really give us really edgy, dynamic, out the box shows, productions, films, but they don't do it, right? They take the safe and easy route, and you're playing with house money, literally, because it costs $27 a month times 12 times over 30 million people. If Netflix probably has more than that, right? That's how much money Netflix is playing with, and we got The Invitation. I was so disappointed, right? Literally having deja vu, thinking I'm having another Mr. Glass experience on my hands, okay? So we get to the end of the film. Evie kills Dracula, blah, blah, blah. Her and her friend go decide to hunt down their relative. So here's my next issue, and this is the final point with the film. And if you watch my reviews of The Handmaid's Tale, you've heard me talk about this. So this ain't gonna be the original song. This is gonna be the remix. Stop casting English actors to play ADOS Americans, okay? ADOS being American descendants of slaves. So Evie is played by Natalie Emmanuel, who's this British actor, okay? No problem with that, have no problem with that, no problem with that. But there was nothing black about Natalie. If her whole value was the fact that she was a black woman, then why not have her black woman? Her friend would have been a better Evie than Natalie was. Natalie should have been the friend, and her best friend should have been Evie. That is a better story. That is dynamic. That is interesting. But again, there's this whole pinch it to move the casting of these biracial English actors to kind of like half-ass check the box of diversity and inclusion, but not really endow them with any type of ADOS qualities. And I'm not saying there's one way to be Black or that the Black experience is universal. But if I can close my eyes and watch a person who says they've been Black in America, they've been raised Black in America, and I can't tell, then you have a casting problem, okay? And I'm telling you, and the reason I harp on this is because Black actors in Hollywood, especially, or Black actors, have the highest unemployment rates, right? Like, they're not getting cast for these roles. They're not getting these roles. These roles are going to British-speaking actors, and when really they could really be going to ADOS actors here in America who could really endow this with a sense of characterization. If you had put Evie's best friend in the role of Evie, that is a dynamic story. That's an interesting story. But instead, because Netflix is all about algorithms, you need some kind of white-ish, Black-ish, kind of culturally, ethnically peculiar woman to play this role, when in the fact of, why, if you want a Black person, get a Black person. And this is nothing against the actress who's played the part. I thought that she was fine. I just knew that she wasn't Black. So again, I'm going to keep harping on this because this is really important, because again, quit trying to interchange the two and think just because a person is Black or Black in England and Black in America, we can keep swapping them out with stories where their Blackness and their culture is integral to who they are, right? Because again, we would have had a different type of story, right? Because again, imagine Evie's best friend given a proposition to being a vampire and not being broke and then being with Walt DeVille. How many of you think the best friend would have taken that proposition? And then we have a different type of movie. But again, I don't have a show on Netflix. I don't run Netflix. I don't even own Netflix stock. But this again, these are just my opinions of what I thought. So anyway, watch the movie. Let me know what you all thought. Please share, please like, please subscribe. I'm going to do The Witcher Blood Origin and then do a Witcher recap from season 2. I just watched it again and I still loved it. It was still fantastic. But let me know what you think about The Invitation, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.